Ferrets are very intelligent and curious creatures, and as a result, they require a lot of stimulating enrichment. For this reason, we built this 500 square foot nature enclosure to give them a variety of terrains and plant cover in which they can potter about, dig, scratch, snuffle, splash and climb, and give them as close to a natural world experience as we can. In this video, we'll walk through the build steps to ensuring that this enclosure is appropriately ferret proof. The first job is to choose the layout of the proposed site. We had a great bit of unused space at the bottom of our garden, and as you can see, this was becoming a bit of a waste ground. This area is good because of the natural shade it provides for much of the day. We chose to bring the existing trees into the enclosure to give good cover and variation to the terrain. Once confirmed on the location, we started to dig a trench around the perimeter which will form the basis of the dig barrier. Ferrets are excellent diggers, so we need to prevent them from digging under the perimeter fence. We could have gone with a concrete foundation, but it is expensive and not very eco-friendly. So instead, the plan is to have a perimeter wire fence sunk into the ground about a foot. Once the trench was complete, we cleared the area and made a start with the fence posts. For the fence uprights, we chose 75mm square posts, or 3-inch square, and bought 210cm lengths of 7 foot, and cut them in half. This would give us a foot underground and about 2.5 foot or 76cm above ground. This height is optimal at being just right to avoid ferrets jumping out, but also allows us to be able to step over the fence to get in and out. At this point, we also started to bring in earth to start terraforming before the fence got in the way. With the fence posts cut and rested in their proposed places, we brought in the building inspectors to give groundwork sign-off. The wire fence is then set in position in the trench. We used 16 gauge double galvanised welded mesh with 1-inch or 25mm holes. The fence posts are then concreted in place, and at the same time the wire mesh is also concreted next to them. The remaining trench was then backfilled with the earth, although in hindsight this was suboptimal, and we revisit this later in the build. You'll notice at this stage that the wire mesh is short and doesn't reach the top of the posts. This wasn't planned, it was mainly because I wanted to utilise some existing 3-foot mesh I had. Although in hindsight it's probably a blessing, as the 16 gauge wire is very difficult to manage at tall dimensions. So to add the extra height, we simply ran around the perimeter again and joined the 2 runs of mesh with metal clips. These gabion clips are very strong, but you need a special tool to install them. They're better than the usual hog rings used in wire fencing, as they result in a smooth connection, whereas hog rings leave sharp, pointy ends. Once all the mesh is in place, it's trimmed such that it raises only 2-inch above the top of the posts. This 2-inch overspill is then folded over. The reason for this is twofold. Firstly, it makes it easier to attach the wire to the wooden shelf which will run along the top next, but secondly, it gives a lot more rigidity to the fence mesh. All this new galvanised mesh was giving quite a striking metal look to the garden, so we chose to reduce this by painting it black. As you can see, this dramatically reduces the visibility of the fence. Here's the view from the house. The next step is to fit the timber boarding around the entire perimeter and staple the mesh to the underside. The top board has a few functions. Primarily, it serves to create an overhang and prevent ferrets escaping by climbing up the mesh. But secondly, it serves as a perimeter seat for people to sit or lean on when watching the ferrets play. This is where we made the second mistake, and again, see later in the video for the fix. Whilst the height of the perimeter is designed such that we can step over it, we still installed a door for easier access if necessary. It's now time for the fun part in terraforming the interior. First job was to bury some drainage pipes before finishing off the terrain levels with more earth. It was at this stage that we introduced the Babbling Brook water feature. Now, recall earlier that I said that we filled in the perimeter trench with earth. Well, this wasn't ideal, as the perimeter might be an obvious point for ferrets to have a concerted attempt to dig out. So I replaced this earth with some sizable hardcore instead, thus preventing dig attempts. Who'd have thought it? Flip-flops are not suitable protective wear for breaking stones and concrete into hardcore pieces with a large hammer. The second error mentioned earlier was related to the timber board overhang. This overhang was designed to stop vertical escape attempts. You can see here that the ferret's front feet are not long enough for the ferret to feel comfortable letting go of the wire and reaching over the top. However, whilst we bought the widest decking board available, it proved just that bit too narrow, as some of the larger ferrets could just manage to get a grip and haul themselves up. Clearly, the decorative ridge lines on the board aided this grip. This meant we needed a plan B. This plan B involved fitting plastic drain pipe around the inner edge of the perimeter board. This drain pipe would firstly add that little extra overhang, a much larger height, and an all-important low grip surface. By using a table saw to remove a small section of the downpipe, it could be clipped onto the edge of the timber boards, making it impossible for the ferrets to get a grip on the top, and hence the enclosure is now ferret-proof. Having completed the perimeter fence and the main hard landscaping, it was now time for the soft landscaping. To give some rigidity to the hills and mounds, we laid some turf with the aim of the roots preventing rain wash away or too extensive digging. Similarly, we added some stone walling to provide extra support for certain banking, such as holding the bridges. 2 wooden bridges were built from scraps of wood in the garden, which provide a fun activity for the ferrets whilst adding some cute aesthetic for the humans. A variety of plants were introduced, interspersed with rocks and tunnels for varied enrichment. Although many of the plants required some protection from being dug up instantly whilst they were getting rooted in. we knocked together a couple of nest boxes for some downtime or to escape the elements. The mature trees we included within the enclosure gave them some great ground cover and overgrowth to play in. This was complemented by a small log pile zone. Finally, of course, the stream water feature is a big hit. We can't wait to see how this nature zone develops as the plants bed in and grow. Thanks for watching. If you did like the video, please like and subscribe, and try out some of our other videos.